This is The Creative, a podcast of authentic discussion with industry pros.
All right, so my name is Sara. I'm a software developer. I work at a web development agency here in Austin, and I work predominantly in Rails and JavaScript. So what is interesting about what I do? I'm not sure what is...
Well, okay, let's take a quick step back.
Okay.
What is Rails?
Oh, yeah, that's
Help
something...
me out with that, because, like, I take pictures, and I record sound, and I make bad podcasts. So, trains?
Okay. Yeah, I just dropped jargon and didn't even think about it.
No, it's okay.
So Rails is a framework for the Ruby programming language. So Ruby is a way...
Is that like HTML?
No. And yes, depending on what you mean. So think of it this way. In programming, there's languages just like there are in speaking. So there's like German and Spanish.
Okay.
So Ruby is like the Spanish.
Yeah.
It's like a language.
Okay, so Ruby is a language. So what Rails is?
It's a framework. It's basically a library of commands and things to design software around.
Okay. Like... I'm trying to think of something that's analogous to the creative world.
Let me see if I should try.
Because when you say a framework, we're getting hung up on a small thing, but
we really
I really don't understand what a framework is.
I'm trying to think if I can describe it in a way that makes sense to like a non-programmer or a non-like.
All right, that's fine.
Well, give me a moment to think. You're like immediately like. Let me see if I can come up with one. Think of it just like a process, I guess. It's
okay.
It's a set of processes that you choose to do.
So it's a language that's executed in a specific way.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So maybe that would be analogous to like. If you're a really good creative in a specific format, like there's video, but reality TV is different from social videos.
Or you could think of it like an art medium too. Like sculptors, there's certain characteristics that are unique to sculpture that when you're in that medium, you use those techniques, but you wouldn't necessarily apply that to painting.
Okay. So you do, I mean, this is great. I know you for all these years, and I still don't know what you do.
Well, it's also, I just changed languages.
Okay.
I don't know if that's relevant, but...
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is. You tell me. But so as far as opening the door to more conversation, you are a developer, and you're working with Ruby and what was the other one that you said? JavaScript. And... what do you make with this? Like, is it... I mean, you don't make videos.
I do not make videos.
What do you make?
I make apps.
Apps.
So we make... basically, if we're an entrepreneur who has decided that they've got a great idea for something that should be an app or a website, and they need someone to build it for them because they don't have... usually...
Now, when you're talking about building a website, you're not talking about WordPress bullshit. You're talking about like a useful thing, like Slack on a website or something like that.
So, yeah, I say website just because that's what I used to do. Now I'm doing web applications, which is more complicated, like Slack or, any SaaS products. So anything that, I'm trying to. All of a sudden, I'm drawing a blank on like every.
Dropbox.
Yes, thank you.
Or. Airtable, or because these are ones that we like.
I know. Yeah, those are all
Droppler and all those little doodads.
Yeah, basically what happens is when you get to a certain level of complexity in programming, WordPress or even a content management system like Drupal or any of the other ones can be too heavy because you're handling a lot of data. So you have to have a really light setup, and so that's what a programming language like Ruby or Python does for you is you get that instead of all the weight of a content management system.
Okay. So
that's what I do. This is what I make now.
Okay, so then, because that's a really alien world to me, but at the same time, like, you're still going through procedural thinking, you're still going through methodology, and there's got to be some kind of, like, I don't want to use something as buzzy as saying design thinking, but, like, you're working with commercial intent in mind, and there's a certain amount of art and creativity to what you're doing. Like help me build a bridge from the engineering stuff that you're doing to the squishier design world.
Oh, you just said it. The design thinking process
Shit, okay.
is basically, we call it the software development life cycle, but it's that idea of you plan, and then you write it all out for everyone, and then you implement it, and then you look at it and you review it, and then you realize, oh, we should change this, and then you start over again. And what design thinking is: planning, implementing. There's like 4 of them, and I can't remember what they are. But anyway, well, I mean, I know what they are. It's planning, implementing, review, and then you go back and you reiterate and do it again. Yeah,
well, I'm terrible. I mean, I intuitively kind of understand it because I've worked in it, but, like, I only know the word design thinking from, like, blog rags. Like, when I was in school, like, that wasn't even, like, it seems to be, like, codified more recently or outside of my sphere of understanding, so, like, I'm sure there's some angry shithead somewhere that's just like, fuck you, man, it's X, Y, and Z, it's been this way since... what a year, and new to me.
So then design thinking isn't something that designers use?
I don't think it's typically talked about, at least up until recently, it's not something that I've heard in the video space, right? And that's my bread and butter. That's my religion. And so in that world, it's always been about storytelling. Like, storytelling is the framework for all of that. And that's not, even if there's strong overlap, that's not the same thing as design thinking. So, like, the world of designers and those stars and those pillars of that space, even if the lessons are in the world of video as I understand it, which is largely sourced from television and film, like, even if that stuff crosses over and we use some of the similar words, like, I don't know shit about designers as people or methodologies. I've just extrapolated my experiences in a highly analogous space and brought them over. And I think that that's really different from, or maybe that's really the same. Is that how it works in engineering and development, where it's like, I can understand video and I don't necessarily, like, and it doesn't make me a good or a bad designer versus somebody else, but I can take my lessons of video productivity and typography and layout and composition and tension and story and all yada yada, and I can be reasonably successful in graphic design without having any of the vernacular, and I can wing it, and I can still produce things that are interesting and viable. But if you were to drill into the weeds on graphic design, history, and etymology, no, man, shit, I'm ignorant. Like,
yeah, so that the idea that you can transition from one discipline to another by using a generalized set of ideas and then learning the rest using just examples, that programmers do all the time.
Okay.
Because most of the programmers I know can write in multiple languages. Some people have one, but that's usually just because they're starting out. So eventually you just learn that there's this generalized set of rules. Design patterns is kind of what people call them. Like, there's a handful of them that are pretty well known and you should know. And then you just apply that to it's a different tool set. It's like, why would you speak in Spanish? Well, are you in a community of people that speak that language, or are you not, So you just kind of adapt that way. So that idea of permeability of your discipline, I think, is maybe a commonality. I don't know.
All right. Huh. Okay, so, we kind of got tangential there because we go down side paths all the time. But so you're doing development in a really sophisticated space, doing interesting stuff. How long have you been doing it? How many years in are you?
About 4 years.
4? And where you've been working doing web development now, like we know each other, so I know that this is a relatively new job, so I don't want to grill you or put you too tight on the finger with that, but like help us understand, because in the creative journey there's a bunch of ups and downs and detours and side roads and things like that. Help us understand a little bit in how in the new role that you're in versus where you started 4 years ago, like how did you make that journey successful? Was did you have something like, I'm gonna get into apps?
Sure.
Or was it more, opportunity A led to opportunity B, and you just kind of organically found your way here? Like, what did your journey look like and feel like?
Sure. So, my journey, kind of the big North Star of my journey has been, I really like working with math, and I really like problem solving. And so my decisions, like 4 years ago, when it was like, well, I'm second career, so I was a high school math teacher first. And
how long were you a high school math teacher?
About 8 or 9 years.
8 or 9 years. Okay.
Yeah. So I can do calculus in my sleep.
Yeah, I think that's important to yeah.
Another way I say it that's kind of like helps people understand is I say English is actually my second language. Math is my first one, because I actually think, well, I can't. I have a hard time with like not quantifying things.
I know.
So
that's great though. That's great.
So anyway, so leaning into your skills, right? So
yeah, that's a fun way of saying it.
Lean into what you're good at. Lean into what you're good at, right? So I know I'm good at this. I know I like this. So that's been my North Star. And then why programming after math was, I already kind of knew it. I'd taken some classes in it. I taught a class in it. It's tangentially related. And then from there, like getting into the industry, I had a wonderful combination of a little bit of luck, timing, and the right sort of personality and skills to give people comfort in giving me a chance. And so doing that, like I got my first programming job. I went, I think, what was it, like 6 days between my last day of teaching and my first day of programming?
I can't remember how
I don't know if anyone can do that
really
now.
Fast, yeah.
I feel like there's a window of time that closed where someone could pull that off, but now you have to do a boot camp. You have to do...
Yeah, open up on that. Why do you think the circumstances have changed from your opportunities?
Because 5 years ago, when this happened, so maybe I've been... Yeah, anyway. Coding boot camps were not a big thing.
And now they are?
And now they are,
okay.
Yeah. So now, and there's like a dozen in Austin alone.
A dozen?
Yes. If you go Google it, it's a lot. Okay, I'm ballparking. I don't know.
No, I'm not gonna. I don't think it would be fair.
Look it up. I can name a couple off the top of my head easily.
There's a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
I know. I don't.
And they churn out people every quarter, and they have classes of like 25 to 50.
That's ridiculous, because like there are portfolio schools, but I don't think that it's only like 3-month sprints. I think they're longer.
Yeah, that's different.
That's a crazy amount of output for people into the market space.
And so what happened is it changed the market space.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So they changed the entry point. You have to, in order to get a job, in order to stand out and connect with people, you have to stand out. So if you look like everyone else around you, you don't stand out anymore. So me being able to get in at a software company with sight unseen as a math teacher from Chicago, I don't know if that moment in time can happen again or not.
Yeah.
But
when
anyway,
you say it that way, it does start to sound a little unique.
Yeah. So, and then they were fantastic, amazing people who taught me everything for 1.5 years and had amazing mentorship and patience for me asking all of the questions.
Oh, sorry, I'm not watching the time. I'm watching the battery life.
Oh, okay.
But no,
fine.
we're good. We're
okay,
good.
Cool. So they were fantastic people. And then I feel like I'm giving an interview now. I don't want this to become like Sarah interviews.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just like asking questions about it because, like, I think the way that you came about it, there are strong parallels to how people go through finding roles in the creative space, and also some strong differences. When I was talking with Kagan, and even when I've talked with Dane about this, it was all relational. It was who they knew, and it was the timing that they knew them and some luck that kind of moved them through the different positions that they had.
Yeah.
And I mean, the luck part sounds really true, but like, you just applied for a job, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, this one was just, I was out of the blue. I was from a different city even, applying to Austin, which again, I feel like that one was, the stars aligned in a way that like I was very fortunate. And then after that, I think a lot of hustle has defined everything else.
But, you know, it's interesting hearing you talk about how like being in and out of different spaces on contract or just testing the fit, like, there's no kind of consistent answer, and there's I mean, it's really volatile. You don't really, and everyone is saying that. That's what's really interesting to me about when we get to share these two different worlds, is these are the small moments where it's like, oh shit, like we're all grappling with the same kind of instability, you know.
Well, I think it depends on where you are in the food chain too. Because I think that there are people, at least in tech, who are very comfortable, very stable, and will never have to worry about someone like if they get laid off, they have like 48 hours and they can have a new job. I'm trying to get myself to that position too.
Yeah.
I'm not too far away. I think I have maybe like a month or two before my network.
That sounds like a nice world to be in.
Well, yeah, if you build your network right. I mean, in tech at least, everyone's hiring in tech. Like, and you get to a certain point where your skills are verifiable, right? And everyone can be like, okay, this person can actually engineer too. And so once you get there, they're like, oh, will you? I mean, I just napkin mathed. We talked about this the other day. I napkin mathed like this ridiculously large number of tech jobs coming to Austin based on news reports out of the Austin Business Journal. And I'm just like,
yeah, it's a growth period right now. Yeah. Okay, so you are you're building apps right now with a company here in town, and do you feel like, again, without necessarily trying to put you on the spot, do you feel like this is like a good platform to kind of be at for a while? Are you pretty happy where you are?
Excuse me.
Is this in some ways just another stepping stone towards something on your career bucket list? You know, I think sometimes when I talk with creatives, they create goals for themselves. Or like when I was talking with Dane, he was talking about very, very small things. And like, he's really happy when he sees something technically expressed in like a show that makes it on air. It's like, yeah, I did. Like, I'm the foundation of that work. Or when I was talking with Kagan, you know, it's just very visceral. Like, he's doing these gigantic things that are all his. Like, career-wise or within the apps, like what are your benchmarks of achievement? What's your goal for success, or where are you going? Where are you going?
Where am I going?
What's up?
What's a goal for success?
Where are you moving? What you shaking?
I mean, programming has its own different types of, you know, metrics for success. I mean, back end, you get excited when something works quickly.
Okay.
You get excited when you can make it the smallest possible. If you can reduce something to one, that makes you happy.
Do you get individual credit for the code that you write?
GitHub gives credit. So in programming,
and that's like a social network for developers, or what's GitHub?
Okay. It's kind of a social network, but I don't think that's a good way to classify it. What it is it's how do I explain version control systems to a layman? It's basically, it's a way to take ownership over who changes what, right?
Okay.
So it's like, here's the things I think should change, and then when those changes get put into the big main one, you get credit for that. So for example, I can look at GitHub history on a branch in my code base, and see everyone's faces, you know, from GitHub, and know like who did a lot of the changes and who did less of the changes. And then that has now created this kind of semi-social network around it, where if you go to open source, that's kind of like a social network, but open source is, you know, a project you can contribute to, and you just go and you try to fix something for someone.
So like you getting credit for pieces of the work, that's not really like a thing.
Oh, I bet some people make it into a thing. I just don't think that way.
Do you just get satisfaction in an overall product that you worked on, and you're like, hey, I was part of the team that delivered that?
You know what? The big satisfaction I get out of programming is here's an analogy. So if you've ever done like Sudokus or crossword puzzles or any sort of like a short-term puzzle where you work on it for a little bit and then it's done and you're like, yay! And then like 2 minutes later, like the whole experience is washed away and you're doing something else.
Yeah.
Right? That's programming.
I think a lot of creatives can feel that way about it. The moment it's done, it's like, yay! Okay, next.
Yeah. And so you try to give yourself that 30-second moment of like, yay. And like, was it this morning or something? I like cheered as I was like going around the house because something took me 3 hours to solve, but so you have those moments. I think for me, that's why I like it.
Yeah. A lot of the creatives that I've talked to so far, and that being two, at least for the recordings, but, just in general, there's something visceral in being able to visually see or hear what we make. What's the version of that with the code? Because, like, the code expresses something, like...
There's kind of like three things.
What's the tangible thing that you feel? Yeah.
There's the tangible of seeing a web page, having the web page load, seeing the elements on that page. So there's your tangible visual. There's a tangible in that, like performance is always something in mind. So making things faster, lighter, smaller. Think about programming is in a lot of ways like playing golf, like. You want small and simple and singular. And then there's the, I don't know, it works. Like there's this moment of like, it works. Okay, cool. Okay. I was supposed to do this. It failed and now it's passing and now it works.
Is that like sometimes it's like I'll watch a video that I worked on and it flows.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And even if I'm seeing like little imperfections that I can be intimate about, generally speaking, like from beginning to end, it's like, oh, that just felt on precedent. That just felt right. I mean, is that the equivalent? Is like you just looking at it's just like, oh, that clicked.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good description. I can think of experiences like that. Yeah, like you put up a couple pages, you do a flow. You're like, yay, it all works the way it's supposed to.
Do you have an experience like that in kind of banked in your head that's like either a favorite or an easy one to reference? Like can you give an example? I don't know. Maybe that's too on the spot.
I don't know. Because, I don't know if I can come up with something that's worth...
Yeah, okay, fine.
Sharing that makes sense.
Bad question.
Too like the problem is like too esoteric for me right now.
It's fine.
I don't know.
Well, and that's mostly because in some ways I'm struggling to figure out how to talk about it because, I mean, this is a fun one for me just because it's a challenge to bring my knowledge into a way to open these questions up. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know how. Anyway, So, with the work that you do, there's a lot of ups and downs. There's hot days, there's cold days, there's good days, there's bad days. And I think that that's analogous in the creative world. There's finding this balance for yourself and trying to not get yourself too beat up because you live in your head a lot in the work. Mm-hmm. Like, what does that look like from your perspective? What's your head game in relation to thinking through these problems? How do you keep that for yourself?
You mean for like a work-life balance idea? Like how do I keep myself performing but not burning out?
Maybe that's it for you, or like, I don't know. What? How do you work through these problems that involve a lot of thinking? And not burn out. Like,
I'm still trying to solve that completely myself, honestly. I still I I'm actually having a hard time with that right now. Like I get so ambitious, I just keep going, and then I burn myself out because I went like 13 hours in a day, and I like my brain and body don't want to do that. So then when I do, it sucks. So I have to watch out for that. So yeah, like I'm still trying to work it out. I was used to working at a different pace, and so I'm trying to catch the pace of a new rhythm of a new team too. Yeah. So
that seems normal, you know. Still trying to work it out. I know so many people that are. So what are there people or other people? Are there other folks in the industry that you look to while you're working at it? And it's just like, oh geez, you know, I can see lessons in this space and feel better. It's like, what are you turning to help you learn?
I got a couple different channels for learning. Right now, I'm really big into watching like just people on YouTube that fulfill the, you know, tagging that I'm using. Okay. So I'm using that for technical, and some like I watched 45 minutes podcast, or not podcast, just a lecture of some guy talking about how estimates are bullshit and how we need to remove them from all processes, and he just gave like a 45-minute exposition on like why that was important. I don't know where that really was a big tangent. I just took us on.
You're just information gathering.
Just doing information gathering.
Yeah, okay.
So on YouTube, yeah. And then LinkedIn, just because there's some stuff, but I still need to curate my feed again, because it's starting to change in ways I don't like. And where else do I get information? Oh, my mentor at my job is really good at giving me information.
I was going to ask you if you had a mentor.
I do, yeah. He's fantastic. He's a dude who he can't help but mentor people. So nice. I'm like mentee number 3 for him. Or no, probably mentee like 15, honestly. He's like at that level. Okay. He has like a list, because I'm new to the Ruby language, and so he like just gave us this big roadmap of like, here, read these 5 books in this order, and then do these 7 things, and then watch these 2 lectures. And I'm like, thank you for the next 6 months. That's a learning path that like all laid out for me. So I'm doing that too.
And is it working?
I'm in the first month. I've been there under a month, and so I'm at information overload still. So I'm trying, but it's not sticking all the way yet.
No,
that's the first month of anything, though. I
mean, I'm not gonna preach to you how your job works, but that sounds right. That like in the first month of anything, it's just. I'm
swimming though. I'm swimming, and that's what counts.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I say that because I'm not trying to sideways talk about you so much as like. I was at another organization earlier today having a wonderful meeting with people, and one of the folks in the meeting was not new to the business, but new to the organization. And you could kind of tell that they were still feeling shell-shocked just because they had been, they're like 2 weeks new. And it's like, it sort of doesn't matter how good you are. Like if you're just new to an organization, it's just, it just knocks you back.
It takes a minute, yeah.
Yeah.
So learning paths like YouTube videos, LinkedIn though, I've slowed down on my LinkedIn because I feel like it's harder to curate it right now. Like I said, I feel like I had to go back and like frequently tell the algorithm, no, I don't want this. I don't want this.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's just social media though.
It might be just the way it is now.
Yeah.
Because I have to do that in Feedly. I have to do that in LinkedIn. I have to do that when I in Reddit, like what my subreddits are. Like, yeah, I have to do this every like quarter. Like once a quarter, I have to like update all this to be like, no, I don't want to hear about this anymore. I want to hear about this.
Well, I find one of the things that I do is like, so if I start following a new agency or organization or so and so, I just follow somebody. It's like, oh, I kind of want to see your stuff.
Sure.
And then they post some shit that's like not interesting to me or not very good. It's like I get stuck where it's like, well, I don't like this thing, but I subscribed to them within 7 days and I haven't engaged with anything yet. So I should like it just to train the algorithm. but I don't like it.
I don't like this. I just want to tell the algorithm more of these folks.
I find that annoying about social media.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's a fucking like. It's not that important, but you still get tripped up. It's like, but I don't like it. I like you, but I don't like this.
Yeah.
It's just fucking click the button.
Yeah.
Just click the button.
Don't have drama over your social media decisions.
Oh, that's my world, man.
I know.
I'm just drama. Do I like it? Do I don't like it? Fuck, I don't know.
When overthinking goes awry.
Yeah. I mean, that's why that's a big reason why I've started doing these conversations. Is I'm becoming increasingly convinced that at the very least I overthink, and talking with people helps a lot with that. But I find that if it's not overthinking, everybody's got something that they're self-managing against.
Sure.
Within their headspace. Everybody's got some. There's part of their drive that keeps them moving forward, and then there's an aspect of it, of different sizes and different shapes and whatever, that's working against them at the same time. And I think that's really interesting, that all of the things that work against us are somewhat unique, but the commonality is we all have one.
Oh, at least.
Yeah, at least one.
If you have your life so figured out that you are down to one, you're playing at like elite levels. Like,
right? No, but that's so funny because it doesn't seem like it comes up much in conversations until like some barriers are down and you push on it. Anyway, I don't know. What else should we talk about? We're about 30 minutes in. Is there anything? What else would you like to talk about that we haven't?
What else would I like to talk about? Oh, I've got one we could talk about because it's really connected to what we're doing in this moment. The value of having an honest mentor in your journey to growing. Because one, I'm talking to one of mine, and I was just mentioning my new one. Oh wait. And you mean me? Oh, that's yeah. Sweet. That's sweet. That's what I was getting at. Okay. And no, because it's something so I've started kind of mentoring and working with some women through like Women Who Code meetups and all this stuff. And one thing that I've learned is like the fact that I had you like just quietly telling me stuff to like calibrate my social, emotional, everything. Like I wish I could give that to everybody. Yeah, well, because it's so helpful to have like that honest, trusted partner to be like, hey, by the way, you should do this, try this.
Well, I think that's privilege of an intimate relationship, though. I mean, we can't be married to everyone.
No, you can't. That would be really weird.
But yeah, I mean, because I think that's true even with my own work is that when I'm getting tripped up, that's the whole thing. Is you've got somebody with very low barriers you can bounce all this shit off of.
Yeah. I think that's how I got in fast. Because I feel like I've managed to outgrow problems that would have taken me a long time. Yeah. Otherwise, and now I'm with someone else who like it's a different relationship, but he still is also super honest and is like, hey, by the way, you got to fix X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's really useful when you've got somebody that can tell you your pants are down, and then you don't get mad about it too. Yeah, you're just that's like, the other side of it. Yeah, that's right. My pants are down. Thank you.
Yeah. That's just as important.
Yeah, that is. Okay, so
everyone go find a mentor right now.
Find a mentor.
If you don't have one, go get one soon.
Actually, that's not bad advice, though.
It is. It's not. It's really good advice, I think.
It's great advice. Okay. So, if somebody is going to be listening to this podcast and then they would want to go look you up online to learn more about you, would you send them the social profile? Do you have a website? Where should they go to check out more about you?
Sure. Yeah.
What's the plug?
Yep. You can check out more about me at sarapearce.net. That's SARAPEARCE.net. And then also my LinkedIn is a pretty up-to-date, cool thing. And if you just search Sara Pearce in Austin, Texas, I'm
Because we're
sure
in
I
Austin, Texas.
come out because we're in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas.
Except there is another Sarah Pearce in Austin, Texas, spelled the
Dude,
same way.
there's
She
another-
might show up. I'm
there's
Sarah
another
Cashman Pierce.
And there's another Charles Pearce in
I know.
Austin.
I don't think
Yeah.
they're married to each other though.
No, that would just be a little too
That
parallel.
would be way too.
Anyway.
That would be us from another dimension, I bet. Anyway.
Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
You're welcome.
Dear.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for driving me around all day today so I could do other recordings too. And that's it for a super casual episode 3. I'm gonna stop recording now.
Okay.
Now.
Do it.
Now.
Do